So how did you balance studies and football? I think that was something that at the beginning of college that I didn't get right. I think I was trying to do a little bit of everything, trying to do all my college work, trying to do my football, also trying to have some form of a social life as well, which, you know, you can do one or the other. You can't really do all three. And I think it was when I went to DCU that I finally got things right, and I just decided to dedicate more time to my studies, and did my best then to work around my studies. When assignments were due, I had to work extra hard to make sure that I was available for training, available for games. And I think the best advice I would have would be just to manage your time as best you can. What were the benefits of third level education for a football career? I have absolutely no doubt that if it wasn't for my involvement in my studies in college, that I wouldn't have been given the opportunity that I have today. I think that being involved with Maynooth, going in for the first 3 years of my college, that, you know, the attitude for Maynooth was that they wanted to build a very high profile women's team there, and we ended up being a very successful one. And I have no doubt that that kick-started my real dedication to football. It was in college when I really decided to focus on soccer, and I think that was something that came because of how successful things were in Maynooth, and that the attitude was just they wanted to create a really positive environment, and they had the relationship as well with Peamount. So between the two, I think that was one of the main reasons why I think I'm in the position I am today. I also think for a backup with life after football, I think that it's always good to have an experience in college. I think it's, for football wise, it will do the world good as well, because, you know, unfortunately for women's football, you know, we don't get huge financial contracts that are very common in men's football, but a lot of the time we have to worry about, you know, life after football, and I think going to college settles you down that little bit as well. What are your non-negotiables day to day? So I think the main one that sticks out for me is that you have to take responsibility. I think too often now we see people that they look for excuses, they want to blame everybody else, and, you know, I'm not saying that people sometimes may have very, 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 very good excuses for certain things, that something's happened that's completely out of their power, and unfortunately that's part of it as well. But I think ultimately you need to be able to put your hand up and say, that was my fault, I could have done better. And I think when you look at yourself, then you're able to look at, you know, someone else and say, well, they could have done better too. But I think ultimately we always have to take our own actions into account, and that's what we have to improve on. What do you value the most in teammates and staff? I think staff, teammates that are approachable, loyal, trustworthy and honest. I think sometimes you can get to the stage with people who are your friends or even staff that people don't want to hurt your feelings, so sometimes you go for them for a little bit of advice, and they're probably telling you everything that you want to hear, in the sense of, oh, you're doing really well, and oh, it's just you're unlucky. And, you know, where ultimately sometimes you need that person or that coach that's able to tell you, well, I think you need to do better here, you need to improve, or this isn't working out for you. And I think for me that's probably one of the most important things. When you have the honesty, then you know that the trust will come with it, because you can rely on them to give you that little piece of advice that you might need. And I think in day to day as well, I think it's really important to have your circle filled with people who are honest with you. And I think that's where I'm very lucky. I have a tremendous group of friends from college who are without doubt my best friends today, and without their honesty on day-to-day life, you know, I wouldn't have gotten into this position. And I think it's important to have that in your life as well, because, you know, sometimes we can think, oh, we're doing so well, and, you know, I suppose our ego takes over then, and you think that you've made it. And thankfully I have friends that they bring me back down to earth at every opportunity that they get. Most memorable game, I think for Ireland I would have to say that between my first cap against Northern Ireland was a huge moment for me, huge moment for my family, an extremely proud moment, something that, you know, I dreamed of doing, and I was very, very lucky to have gotten that opportunity. I think the first goal versus Slovakia is probably going to be the highlight for me, because I think that first goal is just something that, you know, you work towards and you get it. And the only thing is now I want to build on it and score more goals and, you know, make better performances for Ireland as well. I think ultimately that's the main goal, and hopefully pushing on in the next few years as well and qualifying for a major tournament. I think with Peamount, it would have been when we won the League Cup. I think that was my first piece of silverware in with Peamount, and we beat Wexford down in Wexford, which is always a really difficult place to go. And I think that day was just a fantastic day for the club, and it was also for me because I'd waited a long time to achieve something at Peamount, and thankfully that was a very, very proud moment. And I would also say that the time when we played with Cologne, I'm still playing with Cologne, but last year when a lot of the Peamount girls surprised me on a weekend, when we were playing Bayern Leverkusen in the derby, and we beat them 4-3, and I scored the fourth, so I scored the winner for us on that day. And to get the shock of the girls singing the Fields of Athenry was very, very special, and something that I'll never forget. How did you get to play for Ireland? I think mostly through my involvement with Peamount. Colin Bell had attended a couple of games in the National League, and he spoke to me and showed interest and said that he thought that I could do well, and I think it just really started from there. I think that's when I really needed to make a big decision, because I was still playing Gaelic football at the time, and I think that's really where I decided that this is what I wanted to do, and this is where I was going to make things really serious for me. And really that's it. I think between that, my involvement with Peamount, and my involvement with Maynooth University, I think I had been doing well between the two. And I think then when I had spoken to the international manager, he had in a way nearly invited me to get into good shape and to really push on then, because he liked something about me, and thankfully that's just been the way it has been. And again, that was then, but I need to keep working and improving, because it's obviously you can't just hang on to something you've achieved in the past. I'm really ambitious and I want to keep doing well, and I think it was great to get in the door at that time now, but I just have to make sure I keep myself involved as long as I can, and that's down to the work I do every day. What do you fear the most going into a game, and how do you cope? Well, I don't think I have any particular fears. I think you always want to perform. You always, as a striker, you always want to score. You always want to have a good game. You always want to be involved in the goals. And I think, when you have those games where you don't get that, they're probably the games that you don't you worry about in a way. But also I've realised over the last year and a half that I can play really good football, have a really good match and not score. Of course, ideally as a striker you want to score, but that doesn't happen every game, especially when you play against top opposition. So to be honest with you, I just cope with it by getting my head down, working really hard, and worrying about the next game, and not getting too upset either, and enjoying it.
Always got the